Hello and welcome back to Anna Rose Reads the podcast. I am your host, Anna, and I am thrilled today to be welcoming back a repeat guest for the second time in the same year. Mr. Sam Rebelein is back to chat about his recent release, Galloways Gospel. Now, you might have heard us chat earlier this year about his short story collection, The Poorly Made and Other Things, but I can assure you we have a brand new, fresh conversation surrounding his novel, Galloways Gospel, the idea of cults, weird nostalgia, and all kinds of things related to that novel in specific. Of course, there are some tie-ins to the greater Edenville universe as related to the novel and the short story collection, The Poorly Made. But, it's an all-around good time that we mostly focus on Galloway's Gospel. So if you've read the book and you're looking for a deep dive, you've come to the right place as we are about to get into the weeds on this book, talk about the inspiration points for Sam behind this story, the power behind these characters, and the things that he hoped to, examine and hold under our microscope with Galloway's Gospel. So sit back, relax, and I will chat with you all after this conversation. Hello, Sam. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm thrilled. You are a repeat guest twice in 1 year, and I am stoked about it.
Oh my gosh, me too. This is so fun. I we were just talking before we started recording about how cool it is to have seen. I feel like both of our careers take off in a cool way this year. Cheers to you. I'm not
Here's
drinking
to
because
you.
it's 2 p.m. Which I guess is not an excuse. I could be drinking if I wanted to, but
I
I'm
mean,
not.
it's a Sunday. It's the weekend. You can do whatever
Yeah,
you want. But cheers to
yeah.
you too, my friend. I mean, you've had a big year. At the beginning of this year, you had The Poorly Made and Other Things, which came out, which obviously I loved immensely as I wouldn't shut up about it. And we talked about it then. And then most recently, you had Galloway's Gospel come out, which is like the third book that's set in this Eden field. It's not like really a trilogy because you can read them in whatever order, but this
Mhm.
universe that you've created. I'm thrilled for you. I love that you've created this like whole other world. How do you feel to have like such a it's like a tangible atmosphere that you've created in your very hands. You can hold these three books and you're like, this is Renfield County. How does that feel?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I got to go to the HarperCollins offices last week,
Hmm.
and it was so humbling to see all the other books on the shelves that they published, like all the way back to when they were Harper and Row publishing Moby Dick, and so many other classics and books that I loved as a kid and all this stuff, like even posters for movies that I never read the book for, but like even just like, oh wow, that was based on a Harper book. So and then seeing your books be a part of that, because of course then they have the shelves of just like every single book that they've published recently. So like Paul, Joe, their books are there, and so many other people. And my agent sibling, Betty Corello, her books are there because she's an Avon rom-com gal person. I was going to say fan, and I was like, that's not true. I mean, I guess she is a fan, but she's also the actual author. Anyway, it's just cool. Like I feel like I started like stumbling over my words when I was there too. Like was meeting editors and other people, and I was just like blacked out. So it's amazing. Like the fact that I get to have these books out in the world is so cool. I'm like inarticulate even now talking about it.
Yeah.
So,
No, I
so
mean, I imagine like I would feel the same, like again, it's such you've had, and for folks who don't know, Edenville came out a few years ago, which was your debut novel, and then, you had the collection come out at the beginning of this year, The Poorly Made and Other Things, and then Galloway's Gospel, and they're all set in the same place, kind of about the same place, but also about different things. And I
mhm.
think that it's just like, this is horror. There's no mistaking that your books are horror. And the kind of world building that you pull off and like accessible world building is the biggest thing that I think about when I think about you as an author because we've talked about it before.
Mm-hmm.
Edenville kind of had a cosmic horror slant to it, and I am not a cosmic horror girly, but
Okay.
that was so easily digestible for me, and I was so invested. And then everything else that you've done. you know, I think for me, I don't read a lot of fantasy because the world building just feels too overwhelming for me. But your writing is so freaking accessible. And I love that for you because I think that's pulling a lot of readers in who maybe would not necessarily be one to be like, I don't know if this is for me, but it is. It is so for you. And if you haven't picked up Sam's books yet, you need to because again, it's entertaining, it's accessible, and it's oddly very moving, as we're going to talk about with Galloway's Gospel.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? People detach. You know, it's amazing to figure out where you stand in communities like the Bookstagram community or the horror community as a reader, as a fan, as a writer, or whatever. But then at a certain point, like just when you sit down to read, stop thinking about it. Don't be like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I'm mood reading or I'm finding a particular subgenre to whatever. Like I just fucking love books and like, I find myself mood reading, I guess, a lot lately where like halfway through a number of different books and like looking off camera at my big stack of, bookmarks dangling from various points in books. But I don't think of that. And I think that that's part of the joy that I want to bring into Renfield County, where it's like you could encounter any subgenre at any time, and that's part of the joy of it.
Yeah.
And so to see people either like not engage with that, because there are people who are like, oh, I thought this would be this, and it turned out to be that, and so I'm disappointed. But then there are people who really revel in that and find joy in it, like I do, where it's like, oh my gosh, I thought it was going to be cosmic horror, but then it was like plant people and monsters and this other thing. So that's it been really, really fun to see that resonate with readers, that element of the world, that it's this kind of like huge Halloween town where all the
Yeah.
creatures are like,
Well, it's just
together.
it's so fucking immersive. Like you forget. I think that that's the thing about you and your stories is it's such good storytelling that you forget the categorization or the, genre of it all. Like you're just reading a good
Mhm.
story because it's just so you're just so creative and we're going to get to this. But to be like really specific about it, I'm going to let you introduce the plot of Galloway's Gospel so we can maybe talk a little bit more in specific about where this creativity shines and all of these different things for you.
Okay. Um, so Galloway's Gospel is about this girl who grew up in Renfield County. And this is sort of the big bit that I was working with in Galloway compared to Edenville. Edenville, we have this couple who live in Brooklyn and they are called onto uh, an adventure hero's journey kind of thing into Renfield. And so we're meeting the county with them for the first time. But we're outsiders with them. And for Galloway, I wanted to see what it was like for people who have grown up in such a cursed, terrible place and how that affects their psychology. Because I think that's sort of where we're at now as a culture, that we're just like so inundated with shit that we're like, haha, fuck, like them's the breaks. Um, and so we meet Galloway. She's in high school, and she's doodling little creatures in her notebook. She's bored in class, and all the other kids around her, because they've grown up in this environment where anything is possible too. They sort of are like, oh, where did you see these creatures? These must be based on a real thing. And she tries to tell them that it's made up. It's just her imagination, but no one listens to her. Then the creatures start actually showing up, and she's come up with this whole mythology for these creatures. But when they actually appear in the town, that mythology becomes very real very quickly and very dangerous, and uh, quickly spirals out beyond her control. 10 years later, this town has isolated itself from the world. But the tunnel that was sealing them off from the rest of the county has been opened. And there seems to be some kind of doomsday approaching. And so we have Rachel Durwood, who is a member of the Renfield County Guard, who is kind of the like Men in Black protectorate of the county. Um, she is like, well, I don't know much about cults, and I don't know anything about this cult in particular, but I know that when a cult says their doomsday is at hand, it usually means people are going to die. So I'm going to shut this shit down. So we get these two stories sort of interwoven. The town unraveling in 2009 and 2019 as we're trying to unravel what happened in the years between and stop whatever might be coming. So that's Galloway's Gospel in a nutshell.
Yes, and I mean, great spiel, great setup
Oh,
overall. But
thank you.
but what I want to hit on, and like I always like to start off with the inspiration points for the story. I'm gonna let you answer that part of it, but I want to bring up you very briefly glossed over these like creatures that Rachel is, Galloway is drawing in the margins of her notebook. And Sam, I have to just say, the creations that you come up with, like through Rachel Galloway, the creations that she comes up with, which means that you came up with them. Holy shit. Like, I just need to know where all of this comes from. Like, I know we've talked about where this story kind of falls in the context of Renfield County as a whole, like when we've talked about your other works. But like, where did this story start for you, and how the hell did you come up with all of these like very small pieces that play such an integral role in like where this thing ends up?
Well, it's funny. I've been watching Alien Earth, and I also just like coincidentally read one of the Alien tie-in books by Tim
Hmm.
Wagner, and there are a bunch of other Alien tie-in books that I want to read, like E. Castro's, and who. So I was just talking about another one. But anyway, um, I think that like the first time I saw Alien, uh, I was just sort of like, oh, interesting, and it's sort of this nonsensical life cycle. But now that I've like dug more deeply into the lore through other Alien properties over the years, I'm fascinated by how exactly that life cycle works, from egg to face hugger to chest burster to full xenomorph. And so I don't know. I'm like realizing as I'm saying this that the creatures Galloway draws come from um, some part of me that has always been interested in creatures like that, or the idea that nature is horrifying. I think that in speculative fiction, we often have this divide between the natural and the supernatural. And I think that part of my message through Renfield County is also breaking down that line, because nature itself is so like fucking nuts. Like you watch an episode of Planet Earth and you're like, what am I looking at?
Yeah,
This is
no
like,
shit.
the so-and-so lays its eggs in the whatever so that it can float down the thing and sprout anew and like, whatever. So I'm just interested in those like strange pieces of nature, and that's a repeated refrain in the Renfield County books. It shows up in both novels so far, that someone at some point says, it's just nature, only different. And so the creatures are certainly born of that kind of interest. So that's like, general terms. More specifically, where did these creatures come from? I don't know. I mean, I remember I was a sophomore in high school in 2009, and that was the year that the Wolverine, X-Men Origins Wolverine came out. Not a great movie, but there was a video game based on that movie that I really loved. And it was rated M for mature, and you were playing as Wolverine, like really fucking dudes up. And so I transferred from a small private school to a huge public school for that fall, um, and was just all the Renfield County feelings of like sort of loneliness, isolation, otherness, whatever. And so would often in my eighth period history class imagine Wolverine coming up and fucking up my teacher. And I had actually, now that I'm saying this, to be perfectly honest, it wasn't necessarily Wolverine. It was a character that I had sort of been like toying with in my own kind of like X-Men fan fiction, who was sort of like do you ever see that movie, the Wolverine movie? So the
It's been a
version of
while, but yeah.
Deadpool, yeah, okay, so the version of Deadpool that they have where he's got the swords like coming out of his arms, there was also there was a run of like next gen GI Joe toys where some of the GI Joes had like swords in their arms too. So I was big on blades and arms at that
Yeah. Got it,
time.
got it.
And so it was this character specifically, not just Wolverine, that I would imagine coming in and fucking up my history teacher. And this is relevant because that there's a direct lineage between that character who is, unnamed, lost in my imagination from, 16 years hence. Um, there's a direct lineage between him and Durwood, who has
Yeah.
the blade in her wrist. And actually, one of the few bits that I was always really excited to write about that character was that he would be shaking someone's hand and then just like shoot his blade up into their wrist. And so Durwood gets to have a little bit of that, which is very fun. But
Yeah.
anyway, all of that is to say that these creatures specifically, I don't know
Hmm.
where they came from, but that image specifically was like the original seed for this novel is the angst of being in an overheated history classroom and like, how do I get the fuck out of here? What
Yeah.
magical thing can rescue me from this uh, brick sinkhole? Um,
Well, I think it's just on every level, the creativity in this book is just like firing on all cylinders because like let's zoom out for a little bit and we're going to talk about how Durwood is part of this like like the guard, right? Which is kind of like, like the X-Files division for Renfield County. Like they're like we're going to go look into all the weird shit, right?
yeah.
That on a large scale functions marvelously and there's like lore to it and like politics and like a social kind of construct that you kind of touch on about their ranking and how they get along and what they do in their free time. And so like that's a huge creative like outpost for the story. But then something as like small as this, like you have a restaurant in the 2009 timeline, uh
Mm-hmm,
Planet Pancake, is that what it's called? Am I remembering that correctly?
Pancake Planet, yeah.
Pancake Planet, okay. Uh
Planet Pancake is pretty cool too, though. Maybe that's a
yeah.
competitor. Like,
Well, the menu items, like you come up, the whole thing about this restaurant is that it's absurd menu items, and like you have a chicken Caesar waffle, like
yeah.
the small creative bits like that, and the richness that the small creative choices, like down to the things that the creatures do, like the pigs that Rachel draws and their abilities and what they mean. Um, like it almost doesn't matter the size because their implication is so large within the story. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense? Like I'm kind of in
Yeah.
awe of that creative reach that those things have.
Yeah, I just want everything to have a bit. I think that that has its origins in being really into like sketch comedy when I was younger. I
Hmm.
did sketch comedy all through college. I was the president of one of the sketch groups on campus and the improv group. Neither here nor there. But I think like at one point, I guess my sophomore year in college, we had a pretty big sketch group. We had a lot of people in the group. And so I was trying to write these scenes that would be sort of ensemble scenes. And so even if you only had two lines, I still tried to make sure that those were like you had your own bit. Like it would sort of be like the main two characters in the scene have a little back and forth. And then character Z would be like, I think so too. And then like those were characters who would be easy like button characters at the end of the scene. Like, the main two characters have their thing and sort of storm off or whatever. And then character Z is like, I'm going to storm off too. And then some other characters like, no one cares what you say. Like, shut the fuck up, and like that's the
Yeah.
fun. And so it's a nice way to sort of include everybody else. And I feel like there's some like, high school theater kidness in that too, to make sure that like even the kids who are in the ensemble have a little part. And so I feel that way about all the bits in my books now. It's just like everything should be entertaining in its own right. There's no need to have a still thing. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
like even shows like Community does a lot of like background bits. Like
Oh
Abed has
yeah.
an entire arc in the background of one scene. The infamous like Beetlejuice
I was about to
joke
say the
that plays
Beetlejuice thing is the
yeah.
thing that comes to mind. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that's something that like just happens a lot in comedy. I'm trying to think of like um, horror novels that I've read recently that do something similar, where it's just like sort of aesthetically pleasing at every single thing has a thing. Moonflow actually I think does that really well.
Yeah.
But or even shit show like
Yeah.
I'm just looking over at my shelf now like what's right next to me. um, but so yeah, I just feel like, my own personal attention span is so shitty that like, even if it's just a small thing, like a food item or whatever, it should be sort of poppy in its own right.
Yeah. I think that it's hilarious though that you're calling your attention span shit whenever you have so many callbacks and like you tie up so many loose ends because I would argue that it's not. And I think I wish that I had the time in my reading schedule that I could have done a reread of Edenville and Poorly Made and Galloway because I know that there's connective tissue there that I probably missed
Mm,
because it's been a while since I've read them, like the first two.
mhm.
But like my dream one day is to just sit down with all three of them and, literally take like colored tabs and mark out where that thing comes up again because I know that's what you do.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so fun to think that like anything can fit together, and even
Yeah.
the thing that I'm working on now, I'm like, okay, well, how could it, like, we have this little Easter egg here, could be connected to this little thing there, and actually that was a big thing that I learned from Edenville is to pull back on a lot of the specifics of that stuff because there was a lot in Edenville that I wanted to establish really specifically early on.
Hmm.
And then, stories shift over time, worlds develop. And so there are certain elements that, even when I was working on Galloway, I was like, oh, fuck, how do I like, now I have to say it this way because Edenville's already in print, like
Yeah.
all this stuff. Or even like I named my main character in this new one. I was like, oh, that's such a nice name. And then looked back and there was like an offhanded reference to that same name in Edenville to like someone who is dead. And I was like, oh no, she's like already dead. uh,
Wait, I'm sorry. That's really funny. Oh. I would love I'm so interested in your brain, Sam. That sounds like such a weird comment to make, but the fact that that name lives in your brain somewhere that it came out again and you had to check,
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
good shit.
It's just, it's all fun stuff. I think that like, one of my dreams as a writer is to have the, like, not even just the movie of something come out or the TV show, but I want to see just the trailer for it. And I want
Yeah.
in the trailer for it to say like from the mind of Sam Rebelein. I
Yeah.
think like everyone's mind is a landscape, and I want to invite people into the weird landscape of mine. Which, so I just, that's how these things like start to connect because you're looking across the landscape and you're like, oh, okay, well, this character serves this function. They might as well be the same character as this person who's serving this function. And how can we make those functions meet and things like that, if this person goes to this location, which is also kind of video games in a way, in
Yeah.
video games, you're always sort of like circumnavigating the story in a weird way. Like the story's over here and you're kind of like going around it or through it. Like it's extremely rare for the story to be happening to you in a game the same way that would happen to you if you're reading a novel.
Yeah.
So I feel like the story of Renfield County kind of acts like that, where you're moving through it and sort of like seeing the branches. I don't know if any of that makes sense. Is this
No.
usable? Is this
No, yeah. No, I think it makes perfect sense. And like as somebody like I do play video games here and there. I'm not somebody who's like I have to like really be careful because I'll like get into it and like I won't do anything else but that.
yeah.
So I have to be very careful with my time.
It's been a while since
But
I've played anything either, to be
yeah,
clear.
but like objective-based video games, like there's always side quests. There's all like you can put however many hours into Red Dead Redemption 2 just doing side shit versus if you
Riding a
just work
fucking
straight through.
horse. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. All
exactly.
around.
Exactly. So there's just like all these different ways that you can still get from like point A to point B, either directly or indirectly. And I think with the characters that you create and their relationships to one another, in particular with Galloway's Gospel, the echoes and callbacks that you create because it is dual timelines really I think do mimic that kind of structure that we see in video games like oh this could have like and kind of working backwards like how did we get here and I'll
Mm-hmm.
be a little bit more specific about that with kind of like the tale of two Rachels, right? We have Rachel Durwood and then we have Rachel Galloway, and Galloway is the one that's in 2009 who where all this starts, and
Mm-hmm.
then the 2019 Durwood who's investigating what the hell happened and how we get here and what's going on now. And I was kind of curious just to hear from you what that felt like to like mentally plan out these two Rachels who are very different in a lot of respects, but I do think that there's a lot in common with them, but they feel whole, unique and distinct. You know what I mean? So I'm kind
Mm.
of curious how writing them was for you.
I mean, it's a great question. I think that they just come from different times in my life. I think that all of the major characters that I write are reflections of different ego states. You know, you're working through different things, and it's hard to know what you're even working through until you kind of reach the tail end of it, which is why writing is so fucking hard.
Yeah, no
um,
shit.
like the novel that I'm editing now, I it's just like today realized on this latest pass that this one character that I was trying to be like, I just want her to be like such an asshole, and like I want like I really dislike her. And in this latest pass, it finally clicked that like, oh no, I dislike who she was a year ago because I was working through some other feelings, but I have to really have her be who she is now, you know,
Yeah,
and see her trying to work through these things so that she's an actual like character that we could root for.
yeah,
um, and so to have that kind of code switch and like to then be rooting for her myself, I don't know. I think that sort of stuff comes up all the time, whether it's for Galloway's Gospel or anything else where you're so um, Galloway was sort of working through some of that like high school angst and wanting to be seen and heard and feel like your mind is a powerful place that's worth recognizing, right? That's saying like from the mind of Rachel Galloway, right?
yeah.
Like she wants that, whether she knows that or not. And I think Durwood does too.
Oh, yeah. I was about to say that. That feels very, in a different way. It feels very true to Rachel Durwood, you know.
Yeah, I think Durwood ultimately wants to find the thing beneath Renfield, that she wants to find the one thing responsible for all of it and to put a bullet in that thing's brain and to just like look it in the eye and say, you hurt me irreparably, fuck you, and to like put it down. And I think that's her journey over the course of this book is to realize that like she kind of can't do that's kind of an impossible ask, you know.
Yeah.
And she uh, gives into the like let's go of that, and that was a very powerful journey for me to go on too because I spent so much time with her in The Poorly Made where she was really struggling to like put things together, which I feel like is also like I wrote The Poorly Made when I was in my early 20s. And those sort of like my friend and I call them the Buffalo years because okay, this is going to be such a tangent,
Oh no,
but
you go
like
on. Let it rip.
I right after college, like I think that's a weird space of time because there aren't a lot of narratives about like the year right after college.
Yeah.
There are a lot of coming of age stories about high school and college, and then that's it. You're of age now.
Yeah.
Get out of here, you know.
It's not, you don't pick up until you're like haggard in your 30s and hating your life.
Right. And I
Yeah.
didn't have a group of hot friends that I was hanging out with in my rent controlled apartment or whatever. Like,
Yeah, no. I
you know,
feel that.
so it was a weird time where you're trying to figure out who you are and where you fit and all this stuff. And I my favorite food is the buffalo chicken wrap. And because I had a 23-year-old stomach of steel, I was eating a lot of buffalo chicken wraps at that time. So my friend and I were like, you should write a memoir about this year and call it the Buffalo Years, where it's like these are the years when you're really trying to figure out what's going on and where you are and where you belong, you know. And so in those Buffalo years was really working on The Poorly Made. And so all those feelings got into Durwood,
Hmm.
where she was really trying to figure out the mess of Renfield County in the same way that I was trying to figure out the mess of myself, I guess, you know. And so then to have her go on this like big hero's journey in Galloway was really healing and cathartic. Again, in a way that I didn't really realize until it was over. um, but Yeah, I think that, short answer, like that's just where those characters came from, is these
Yeah.
reflections of different ego states and how you're trying to sort them out for yourself. And so even if a story doesn't have like a thesis or a message, I think that the things that happen to your characters and the way that they respond to things and the way that the story responds to them is a message in and of itself, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's our big thing about like queer narratives, that like how do we have a queer narrative where the two gay characters like end up together and are happy, like they don't have to die and are not doomed
Yeah.
or whatever, like things like that that we're trying to sort out and shift the narratives about. So yeah, I don't know.
There's so much that you just said that I want to touch upon, so I'm going to try and articulate as best as I can
Okay.
with
I
all of
believe in
it.
you.
Yeah. Okay. So you talk about the different ego states of you writing Rachel, right? But like I think that it's so interesting hearing about it from the creator side, hearing that relationship with that character, revisiting her in your, like you said, in your 20s and, closer to now. um like we go through the same things as readers. I mean, you're a reader, so I'm sure that you get this, but or like viewers of media. This is gonna sound really cliche, but it's kind of funny because it just happened this morning. I was doing like a Scream rewatch, so like I watched like Scream 3 last night, and I started watching Scream 4 this
Gosh,
morning,
cool.
and I was like, they kind of did Gale Weathers dirty, man. And I didn't have that
Oh,
opinion whenever I first watched. I was kind of just,
yeah.
taking it in. But then like as I've gotten older and I've seen how like this is gonna be like my little feminist soapbox that I'll tie back into Rachel Derwood, I promise. But seeing
And
how
you don't have to. If whatever soapbox you want to get on about Scream or Gale Weathers specifically, it's like great. And
yeah,
it's a fascinating franchise to sort of like do the like Catcher in the Rye like time shift thing with, because
yeah.
every movie after the first one is like rebooting itself.
Exactly. Well, it's in conversation with itself, but it's still like it
Mhm.
still didn't get everything right because in Scream 4, Gail gets stabbed in the shoulder and she's in the hospital, and then they show like the news segment for her of sheriff's wife is stabbed. She's not Gail Weathers anymore. And then
Mhm.
like repeatedly her struggle through the movie is that she's being dismissed by Dewey because they're
Mhm.
married, and it's like, oh, we'll just talk about it at home. And like, yeah, in the end, like she gets the like, yeah, you were right all along. We should have listened to you. But she still had to be stabbed and get put in the hospital, and it was still referred to as the sheriff's wife. So
Yeah.
I felt like, is she a little morally questionable? Yeah, sure, whatever. But she also got done kind of dirty. And I think, as we grow and we go through life and we experience different things, our opinions change on it, right? Like, because when I first watched Scream, I was like a punk kid in college just discovering horror. And now
Mhm.
I'm in my later 20s and I've been in the world and I've seen how women are treated. And I'm like, that's not so great. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think in turn, you're writing Rachel Durwood and her yearning to be understood and recognized as intelligent and all of these things within the guard that she's in, everybody's kind of like, you need to let it go. It's too big for you. And like, yeah, like you said, it is an incredible ask and it's kind of an impossible ask, but I think that there is some merit to her wanting to do these things. And we see that reflected in Galloway too. Like it's hard for her to fight and say, once things get out of hand, this is not what I intended. This was not actually my creation. It's the
Mhm.
hard thing to do, but it's the right thing to do. And then we see it happen with Durwood too. It's the
Yeah.
hard thing to do and it's the right thing to do. And it's not what everybody else is going to want to do. And that's like my little feminist soapbox rant about why I think I really like the Rachels is because I think that I think a lot of women identify with that. I want to be heard and recognized in that way whenever
Mhm.
it feels like everybody else is willing to kind of just shove this wherever. And this is like, kind of towards the end of what I was going to talk to you about, but I think it's a good time to talk about it now.
This is
You
a good
have,
segue. Yeah.
yeah, you have one line that like brought tears to my eyes whenever I read it. It's towards the end of the book and it's Rachel Durwood and she's, like beat down, kind of broken, really trying to find it within her. And, her thing is that she has this, you brought it up already, this enhancement in her arm where she has the blade shoot out of her wrist at will. And
Yeah.
she's like kind of having this moment of like, will I continue or won't I? And she comes to and she's like, I have metal in me too. And it just made me like it gets me so emotional because yes, it's all
Mhm.
so fucking hard, but we all have metal in us too. So I just wanted to open up the floor for you to talk about that and what that means to you because obviously I just talked about what it meant to me and all these other things, but I want to hear about what it means to you.
Yeah, I mean, oh gosh, you really opened up the floor because I have so many thoughts about this in so many different ways. I mean, that was to I guess to start with, like that was a line that I pointed to when I was fighting for her to have that blade in her wrist because my editor was it was so long when I wrote this. And this book was 140,000 words.
Oh my God.
Um, and so my editor was just like, anything we can do to cut this down. Like, what if, does she have to be part of this like secret thing? Can she just be a cop? Like she could just have, she loves her knife. She loves her knife. And I was like, fuck no. This because my I love working with my editor. She comes from such a different point of view than I do, so it takes us a while to really communicate and find that middle ground. Because I'm like, yeah, but it's cool, and she's like, but how does it make sense? Like, how do we logistically? So like that was a thing that I like looked up the anatomy of like a cat's paw, like when their talons come out, how do the muscles flex, and like what would what would the logistics of it actually be and all this stuff. But that was the line that I pointed to where I was like, if we keep the augments as part of the novel, we will get to have this line. And I think that that's really important for these reasons. And important for me too, because I'm like putting so many pieces together as you're saying this that I like should have realized long ago. But my tattoo, my big arm tattoo is
Yeah.
from The Last of Us Part Two, which is about a young woman kicking as much, two young women really, kicking as much ass as they possibly can,
Yeah.
and not backing down and fighting tooth and nail to get what they think that they need. And for whatever reason, that story just really struck me when it came out. I've played that game uh, so many times. And I hurt my arm when I was little. I was 4 years old, and I was playing tag around the house with a friend, and he ran out our glass front door, and I tried to push the door open behind him, but smashed the glass, tore open the nerve bundle in my armpit,
Oh
like
God.
really fucked up my arm. To this day, can't really like move all the fingers on my left hand as much as I should be able to. Um, but and so that was, of course, like you know, a big part of why I got into horror because that was the world is scary. If you want to get really into it, that was the door to the outside. So this boundary of fear between me and the outside and the cozy indoors. And I like narratives that sort of straddle that line, like Hocus Pocus. I just rewatched Beetlejuice. Scream, of course, is like
Yeah.
scary but kind of safe in its way. Um, and so that's the thing in Galloway's Gospel is that whatever wounds you have, whatever traumas you come into the guard with, they are reshaped into these augments and made beautiful and made dangerous and cool. um, and so I guess there was just a part of me that was like sort of wanting that. And so my tattoo, like Ellie has her tattoo on her right arm, which is the same thing for her. She got it to cover up her zombie bite.
Yeah.
So it's also like sort of augmenting this past trauma. I put mine on my left arm to sort of like make my old wound beautiful again.
Hmm.
Um, and so to have something like powerful come out of that, like if I could also, I don't need to shoot a blade out of my armpit, but like, something
That'd be
like
cool.
that idea of, I mean, yeah, I don't know how useful it'd be. I'd be like on the Avengers, I'm like, coming guys. But, so I guess those are how all those ideas sort of wrapped up into creating that line that I wanted it to feel like this character who just will not back down. Because I think that, even just like being a person kind of feels that way sometimes. I mean, again, I remember being so like depressed and lonely and angsty and all this stuff in high school and like imagining stories before I was like really, really writing, imagining these like epic narratives that were it was like that kind of idea where you're like struggling through some kind of battle, but it was just me walking from seventh period to eighth period. Like
Yeah.
even that can be an epic battle sometimes.
Absolutely.
And so Um, I don't know. That's all the thoughts that are sort of tumbling. That's how it all kind of
Yeah.
came together. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, all of it's just really powerful is the bottom line, and it's like really empowering whenever you close the book. Like when you get done, you feel like, at least for me, like, it felt like I was like ready to go fight the good fight again.
Oh yeah, and
And
especially
that's
important. Sorry, no, finish your thought.
oh no, I mean, it's just it feels like really crucial right now, like in
That's
media
what I was
and
gonna
in
say.
literature.
Yeah,
Yeah, it just
geez,
feels
dude.
like
Yeah, hell
vital.
yeah.
Yeah, it just feels like
Yeah.
super vital right now. Because the world's just insane. But and I kind of want to get to this point too. I want to talk about like the 2009 of it all because one, it's fun. You've got cultural touchstones, like the music that the kids are listening to, and like what they're doodling. Like you even throw in like the cool S that everybody was drawing
That's,
in
yeah.
middle and high school.
Yeah.
Like those are fun things, but like obviously it's a influential time for you, as you've talked about, like this time in your life where it was really angsty and you just wanted to be, you know, to figure out a way out of this loneliness and to like be understood.
Mhm.
So I mean, how did you approach like writing in a 2009 mindset? Like was it easy to slip back into then or
It's funny. I've been thinking about this a lot recently, a year after I finished the book now. But I think it felt easy enough to slide back into that mindset, but there are so many elements of it that I just don't know how well I did. Because I saw this thing recently where someone was like reading a book that was set in the 90s and was sort of like jokingly complaining about the way that the teenagers spoke in the 90s because like their vocabulary and their insults were so like well honed, and they were like, I wouldn't have been that smart of an insulter back in the 90s when I was hanging out with my friends. And so I wonder what like that I wish I had a better time capsule of what that language actually was like, because a lot of it you couldn't write now, I'm sure. Like a lot of it is like, you know, like calling people gay or like using the R word or whatever. And like,
yeah.
I'm, not going to sit here and say that I'm a hero. I'm sure that there were similar things that I said back in 2009. And especially like, I've been rewatching It's Always Sunny.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so like,
I was
dude,
literally about to say there's no way that half of that I was thinking of The Office and Always Sunny that it
oh,
could
for
get made
sure.
today. Like it just
No,
there's no
yeah.
way.
It's absurd. Some of those episodes of Always Sunny and just really like yeesh. But it's it holds up in so many ways. It's so funny and like so, and you can tell that like these aren't things that they actually believe, because they
Yeah.
always like have some other sane mouthpiece in the show, or like D will be like, you can't use that word, and they're like, ah, shut up, D.
Yeah. D you
um,
bird, yeah.
yeah, D bird, you look like a bird, and then they all laugh. It's like,
Exactly.
uh, so I don't know. I guess like point being, it felt easy enough to like have fun with those characters, to keep it light. But there is an element of it that I'm like, I wish I like could remember better without the haze of the way that I speak now and the things that I think now. What was that dialogue really actually like? And Grady Hendrix talks about that too, that he was writing a scene about people, like kids bullying each other in the 80s. And he was like, I had to change the language because you can't write that stuff anymore. But there's a way in which I'm like, that's like almost worried about it, because I'm like, well, how do we like make sure that those bits of language don't like somehow dissolve and then like get recycled and reused? And I think we're seeing
Yeah.
that now too, that like
Yep.
the sort of pushback against this language is also like bringing it back to the fore. And like all of a sudden I'll like on my doom scrolling get some meme that's like heavily conservative language, without the shell of like irony or whatever.
Right.
And you're just like, how are we backsliding?
Yeah. Well,
um,
it's like you don't want to erase for the sake of it. You like history shouldn't repeat itself, right?
right.
But like how do you keep this in our conscious without it being offensive or how, like we
Right.
do we keep it in a way that's like tasteful and respectful. It's hard because, erasure is how you end up repeating history. So,
Right. And I was really conscious about that. The beginning of the pandemic, when people started to talk about the epidemic of 1919 again,
mhm.
Spanish flu,
Yeah.
whatever, which I guess is not, I shouldn't even call it Spanish flu, but I'm like blanking on yellow fever. Is that
You got me beat on what the actual name of it was. So,
okay? See, then this is what I'm talking about. This is the
exactly. This
problem.
is the point. Yeah.
Like, yeah. So
We
just like
are walking
aware,
proof.
right? And I think that was a big question at that time. It's like, oh, I'm so tired of COVID stories, but if we don't write COVID stories, they won't exist. And then 100 years, when the next pandemic hits, like, what are we going to do? What are we going to turn to? And so that's the kind of thing that I'm conscious of. But it was a huge, um, I mean, we had a big talk about it. I make it sound like, we had a big talk, but like it was a nice back and forth with my editor where we were having very thoughtful conversation. That's a better way to put it. Because in Edenville, there's one point when Cam and Quinn are having this big fight. And in the actual text, he calls her, he's like, you're being a superstitious bitch. But originally, I wanted him to just be like, you're just being such a spaz right now.
Hmm.
And so the conversation was like, I believe that he is the kind of asshole who like
That would
never
say that.
stops, would
Yeah.
totally say that, never stopped using the R word, but like only around his friends, whatever.
Hmm.
And Victor Laval talks about that as well. He's like, I wish that people were more honest in their writing about the casual racism that like, if you're a white person around a group of like your white friends, how do those like casually racist things pop up? And you don't say anything when you should, even though it's just you and you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
um, I, and initially, or eventually, decided to take the word out of Edenville because I was like, you know what? I want everyone to be able to enjoy this. I don't want there to be anything in here that bumps anybody. I'll never kill a dog in any of my stuff. I did, much to my boss's chagrin. She's a big cat lady. There's like one small bit in Galloway where a stray cat is like sucked under. It's like half a sentence. And I guess a dog does die off screen in Edenville. But anyway, I just felt like, it wasn't worth having that word in there to
Yeah.
have a reader hit that part of the story and be taken out because of the weight that that carries. Um, so, geez, all of this is a really long answer to say, like, it was a lot of fun to go back into that sort of teenager headspace and very freeing because, like, the teenage logic is so, like, much easier to work with than adult
Oh yeah.
logic.
Oh yeah. Nobody
But,
worries about anything as much as the adults do. But I think that
yeah,
I think that you like saying all that there was like such an honest part of this conversation because, it's not something that you may readily like think about when you think back to then, but like I was in late middle school in 2009. And so I mean like the inappropriate language or like the not so great language and insult your mom to everything was,
totally. Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
that's true to what happened, but it's like how do you walk that line of being authentic but being respectful?
Right.
Like I think that that's a huge part of like reflecting back on anything that we've ever done in America,
Yeah.
honestly.
And to remember all the things that you're informed by. I mean, we're talking about Always Sunny, The Office, Family Guy was huge in 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
And, like South Park, all these sort of like narratives that are geared towards adults and lampooning the way that adults think and speak that you're absorbing as a kid. And so you're like, okay, I can talk this way too. Um, and I think that's sort of important to keep in mind,
Yeah.
when you're looking back and writing these nostalgia pieces.
Yeah. But I do think that you did a great job of like using the things that you don't like. I know I said it was fun, but like your music references, like the small little things I think do go a long way in setting that atmosphere and that tone without having to say it, without having to use like the word space to bring readers back to 2009. Um,
Yeah.
but there is
Wait, before you get into this, next
okay.
question, did you
Yes.
have one of those like little robot dogs that you could plug your iPod
Sure
into.
did. An eye
Hell
dog,
yeah.
yeah. I had a white one, and I remember I like would leave it in the bathroom closet because I was like I like to listen to music when I shower, and that was like
Mhm.
I would plug my little iPod in, listen to the eye dog.
You
I
would
remember it
dance with
so
it.
clearly. Oh my God, I had a
Yeah.
turquoise bedroom too. I remember all of that very,
Oh,
very clearly.
amazing. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, just had to check in. I had one too. He was a little Spider-Man themed
Yeah.
dog.
I
Um,
remember him. Oh my God. You had to click his nose to turn him on, and his little
yeah.
head would turn. Ugh.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm getting a little nostalgic, but anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. What was your next thing?
Okay, so this, we're getting close to the top of the hour, so I kind of want to leave with this bigger question that I think Galloway's Gospel does wrestle with, and I think even to like our point that we just talked about with being responsible in what you create. That's a big
Mm-hmm.
topic, right? Because Rachel
Mm-hmm.
Galloway is the one who doodles these things, and then before we know, she's like kind of accidentally created a cult that's gotten out of her hands. I mean, it's mostly a lot of other people are involved in that. It's not just her, obviously, but
Right.
the responsibility around creation, I think has been like a really, for me, it's been like a hot kind of topic lately because I just read the October Film Haunt by Michael W. Hunt.
Oh
And
shoot! No,
there's,
I'm like 50 pages in. No spoilers.
oh no, but that becomes like a big forefront of that book is like, what do you do with what you create? And like, what does it mean to create?
Mm-hmm.
And like, once it's out, like, what does it mean to be responsible and where does culpability fall? Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think that there's a conversation that Rachel Galloway is having with herself with that as this spins out of hand for her in the book. And so I'm kind of curious how much of that you were wrestling with, like as the writer, like and I think you kind of already answered it by talking about what we did in 2009, like being responsible for what you create, like it's a huge deal. And I imagine it's not always an easy thing to handle.
Yeah, actually, the two main things that I think about when Evil came out, I got the big box of I got several boxes because I was signing pre-orders for
Yeah.
stores, whatever, and had a moment where I was looking at all this paper and I was like, what a fucking moron I am that like my ego has driven me to murder these trees. That like these trees are dead because I have the balls to like put a book out in the world. Like I really like, and I have that low grade panic that I think all of us are feeling right now, where it's like the bread and circuses are ramping up in direct proportion to the total collapse. Like when I go into the movie theater and see popcorn buckets, I'm like, this is totally the end. The fact
Yeah.
that like a few years ago, science across en masse was like, we only have a few years to turn this around. And everyone went, oh, that's terrible.
And
Popcorn
kept going.
buckets,
Yeah.
labubus, blah, blah, blah.
And kept trucking. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like doubled down. And so, thinking about being responsible about what I create. I mean, that's certainly one thing that sort of swims around, and it hasn't changed anything that I do on a daily basis. And I'm still like excited to publish more books, but it's, certainly a weird sort of like twinge. That and this is sort of a weird one, but the Shattered Man that I sketch in
Yeah.
all of my books,
Hmm.
I did see that image in a nightmare several years ago, the nightmare that inspired Edenville, whatever. And so then was signing books, sketching him inside and all this stuff. And I was sort of like, oh, geez, this is a like weird cosmic symbol of pure evil, like multiversal evil and chaos. And I'm spreading the good words to anyone who like, I'm spreading his
You're gonna
influence.
you're gonna have so
Um,
much fun with the October Film Haunt.
no. um, so, those are the two main things that I think about when I'm like thinking about being responsible. And there was some language in other parts of Galloway that we changed as well. Like even like I said a moment ago, like the word moron, we took out at one point. Was another one. There are a couple times when Galloway is like, "Oh, that's really lame," which is one that I struggle with. Like I hear it is deep in my vernacular,
Yeah.
and the thought is very automatic, many like daily that I'm like, "Oh, that's so lame" or whatever. But
Hmm.
I hear people feeling um, uh, offended or
Yeah,
triggered
affected
or
by it.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, affected by it. And so yeah, I don't know. I mean, those are the main things that I think about as far as creating. And like I said before, just being conscious of like the things that happen to your characters and the way that they happen. Like that is such a delicate balance with horror between exploitation and illumination, I guess.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to illuminate certain
Well, like not,
things.
yeah, not being like overly gratuitous with like violence and things like that. It's always a hard line to walk. But I do have like a lot of respect for your writing because I do appreciate how you write women. Like that's something that keeps me coming
Thank
back is
you.
like I feel like you understand people fundamentally and the women that you write feel real. So like that'll keep me coming back every time. But I do get where you're coming from on like how do I where's the responsibility in this and like the authenticity and all this other stuff, you know?
Yeah. Well, and thank you so much because your questions are so great. You really got me talking about stuff beyond the norm. I think it's tough, or I have learned over the course of 3 books now that it is tough to swim down through the layers of monster weirdness and cum jokes and like all this other stuff to be like, oh wow, Quinn's actually a pretty complicated character who's dealing with her own feelings of codependence and like, blah, 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 and uses this story to activate herself in the same way that like Galloway is struggling with these feelings of wanting to be seen and being heavily manipulated by another prime narcissist and all this
Yeah.
stuff. And so I appreciate you like getting right to the heart of the juicy character stuff instead of being like uh you know like, oh, pigs, that's pretty crazy, huh?
Well, I mean, it is. It is pretty crazy and it's fun. But I think the thing that grips me the most about your stories, though, is like the character development and where these characters end up. And like the biggest thing to me that I take away from Galloway's Gospel is like all your creativity is super fun and it's useful. Like you said, you use every part of it. It's not just for, it's there for a reason. But, to the point of where the horror shines, it's the very human decisions that feel horrific. It's the things that
Mm,
happens, the people that treat Galloway the way that they do and like what they do in the face of like this thing coming into their town and them
yeah,
either buying into it or rejecting it and like how they treat that is very horrific. It's very social horror.
yeah, yeah,
So there's all of these things that, yeah, they're kind of out there, but like they bring about these greater, understandable, like grounded horrors that we unfortunately know all too well. Like this
yeah.
is stuff that we recognize.
Yeah, you need those archetypes to really bring out the specifics that you need the characters like, and these were my two favorite to bits. Well, I shouldn't say that, but these were two of my favorite characters to write were Eddie Spaghetti and Dr. Eric
I
because
love
they're
Eddie
so
Spaghetti. I love Eddie Spaghetti.
they're so archetypically creepy in their
Yes.
own ways, and their arcs are I think sort of tangential, but in opposite directions,
Hmm.
where they're heading to the same place, but they're like engaging in it in different ways, where Eddie is very like physical and Dr. Eric is very like calculated with
Yeah,
his
like
like
kind of
I'm even doing
manipulative.
the like
Yeah.
as I'm saying this, I'm tapping my fingertips together. Um, the botanist was my other favorite character to write. I fucking love the
Yeah.
botanist. But those two, like to have them be so swept up in something that is so fantastical, I think really illuminates like as a human being, you could be in any situation, and the human qualities will still play out the same. And I think that's what we're really battling now is that we have these camps of people who are like, look, here's pictures of Nazis. This is what we're becoming. The cycle's repeating. And then people who are like, fucking nerd, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, so how do we make a narrative that,
How do we bridge the divide? Like, how
yeah,
do we, yeah.
how do we do that,
It's
man?
almost
Like,
like learning how to talk to one another again? And it's
yeah,
crazy that we're like the way that that might be through, insane cults and poop pigs. But hey, if it fucking works, it fucking works.
yeah. And that's the invasion of the body snatchers of it all. That like
Yeah.
the fear that all of a sudden, like you're talking to someone and they'll reveal that they voted for Trump all 3 times. And then you look around and everyone else says the same thing and they're all pointing at you and you're like, oh no, like that's what stories like Body Snatchers and Galloway and um, everything else in that sort of oeuvre, like try to
Yeah, that
get
that
at.
big group, that big toxic group think is so fucking scary. Like to think,
Yeah.
it makes your stomach hurt, to think about like that. But
Yeah.
oh man, I have kept you for over an hour now, Sam. So I'm gonna try my very best to wrap
Oh,
this up. But I hope that the length of this interview and I feel like we could talk about this book and the world that you've built just for days because it's so rich. And like I opened it up with your creativity, and I think that that really goes so far because there's just so many layers and textures that you can touch upon in this book. I mean, we haven't even gotten to like the uncanny valley part of his story where like some people are kind of alive, but they're kind of like there's so much that happens.
oh,
And
geez,
it's
yeah.
so good.
Oh my gosh, the
It's
ghosts, the plant people.
yes, there's so
Um,
much. It's like
yeah.
there are certain books that I categorize as like the Stefan from SNL bit where he's like, this club has everything. Your books always fall into this book has everything category, and you can just like rattle off all these things.
Oh, fun. Well, thank you. I
No.
think you said the same thing about Poorly Made. So
Yeah,
that's
it
a true
does.
honor.
You're consistent. You are very, very consistent, and like there is something for everyone here. But to kind of shift and to wrap up, what are your plans for Renfield County? Like, what are you working on now? What does the rest of your year look like? All those good things, and like only the things you are allowed to talk about. I am not trying to get you in trouble with publicists or publicity teams.
No, no, I'll take the heat.
Okay.
I am working on a novel now that is, I feel very grateful that William Morrow has come on this journey so far with me, and I wanted to throw them a bone and like instead of like pushing harder into Renfield right away, like it's like, well, let's do a standalone, you guys.
Yeah.
Like, I'll do a book that's like a William Morrow book, a little lighter on the like weirdness. And so I pitched the one that I'm editing now is like um, The Shining as an escape room. And we have a couple who it's a very fancy escape room. You win like $50,000 if you beat this escape room over the course of a weekend where you're in a haunted hotel and you got to deal with the ghosts and solve puzzles. Um, so you apply and it takes a while to hear back if you actually are allowed to play the game or not. So this couple, they apply, they break up. A year later, they get in. They have to put their differences aside to navigate close quarters. The people who set up the game didn't know that they broke up, so there's only one bed. Heyo. And there's ghosts, of course. And then it wouldn't be a Rebelein book if it didn't go absolutely fucking ape shit about halfway through. So
Nobody can see this, but I'm smiling so big because there's so much that you dropped the oh and they broke up and I like my jaw hit the floor. Oh, you really, but the reason I'm so excited about that is because I loved the interpersonal drama that you wrote so well in conflict within
mm,
Edenville.
mm-hmm.
It was so good. So this is great news for me personally. I'm living for this.
It's thank you. It's going to be fun, and that's sort of what I was talking about before. That like we had two novels where the guy was the asshole narcissist, manipulating, gaslighting, whatever. And so I was like, all right, the girl's got to be the asshole this time. We can't have it be like just the guys are assholes because sometimes girls it could be assholes.
Hey, equal
Um,
opportunity employers over here, okay?
I've known assholes of all kinds. Like, um, so where they're coming from is like she is trying to work through like letting people get close to her, and he is trying to be more outgoing. And so like when they were initially together, like that just wasn't working at all. She was like, "You're such a dork," and he was like, "You're being really mean." And now a year later, can they make it work? I don't know. Tune
Oh, this
in.
is so thrilling. Oh my God, I love it. I love
uh,
it. I love it.
So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I love the villain in this one. Is a ton of fun. I just love villains in general. They're so much
Yeah.
fun. And this has been, I'll leave you all with like Sam's writing advice of the day. This has been a big lesson that like it always takes me so much energy to explain Edenville and Galloway compared to like The Shining as an escape room, also a little bit rom-com-y. Um, Keep it simple, stupid, like simple bits, simple premise. You know, sorry, someone's going by outside, but
Oh no, you're fine.
he's agreeing. He's like, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Chris Panettiere says the same thing. Been talking to him about Shit Show, and he's like, I
Yeah.
can't believe Shit Show is the book that like I put the least amount of thought into relative to my other novels, and people are resonating with it the most. And I was like, keep it simple, stupid. It's another good
Yeah.
object lesson in like simple bits, big characters, you know? So that's where we're going to see how this one goes.
I love
But
that.
I'm really excited about it.
I'm excited for it too. Oh man. Well, thank you so much, Sam, for doing the deep dive with me on the book and just like being really honest with your answers and like going there. You know, like I know sometimes it's not super easy to be like, well, actually, it was really hard for me to think about 2009. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I do appreciate it. Is there anything that we did not mention or talk about before we sign off that you wanted to bring up?
Um, no, I mean, out of curiosity, because it's such an ensemble book, and the same ensemble 10 years later, which made it actually feel like two ensembles, which I would never recommend to anyone. It was so hard. But who was one of your favorite ensemble characters? Like outside of our main, the Rachels, right? Like who did you
Yeah.
really have a fun time with?
The knee-jerk answer would be Rachel Durwood because I really liked her grit and her tenacity. Like I really,
Mm.
really enjoyed it. Let me think a little bit.
Eddie Spaghetti, you said you were a
I
big
just love
fan of.
that. I just loved like how the duality of his caricatureness, but like his relevancy was so fucking brilliant. I was like, this is fantastic. I love this so much. I'm blanking on his name now, but it's the friend that Rachel Durwood has that he's kind of like looking to retire. It's her partner
Oh,
actually.
Bruce.
Bruce,
Yeah.
Bruce, Bruce,
Oh, good
like,
guy.
oh, he just like yanked on my heartstrings a bit because he's got this like protective role over her, but he's
Yeah.
also like trying to wrestle with like walking away while being intact and like the
Yeah.
decisions that he ultimately made. It's just, ugh, it's a
Yeah.
good one. It's a really, really good one, and he's got a lot of dimension and texture, and it's almost like like you. I kind of wish like we got a novella of like his life, like all of the shit that he dealt with
Oh,
before.
sure.
Like
Yeah.
you can tell like he's that kind of character that has that richness to him.
Yeah.
So
Well, never say never. I will say, like, and this is not a big spoiler because it's the first chapter that we meet him where he's
yeah,
like gets rattled on the job and wants to retire. And he sort of has that like, this is my last job lingo, like
yeah,
one last ride. And my friend was reading it and was like, this is the most about to be eviscerated character, like about to like die. No, no one signs their death warrant more than a character being like one last ride. And
one
it's
last
like,
case, one last case, then we're done. Yeah, no,
yeah.
I
Um,
knew, I did know, and I was like, it still makes your stomach hurt to
yeah.
go there with him, but no. I mean there even like Rachel Galloway's like little brothers cracked me up too
Oh
with all of their
gosh. Oh, the
bullshit.
twins.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, they were
they
fun.
just that her dad too and like how her mom and dad interacted with one another was really fun. Yeah, I just and but also like the smaller characters and then like when they're met with this huge like conflict is really interesting to see like what they did because you
Mm.
saw what they look like on a regular like Wednesday night
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then you saw everything else. So,
Yeah. To
no,
see
just
caricatures actually get power. To be like, oh
exactly.
no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, sweet. Thank you for allowing me to fish
Oh
for
my
a couple
God,
minutes for a moment.
absolutely.
I'm
No,
just curious, because I
no,
love
no,
these people.
absolutely. But no, Galloway's Gospel is just such like a rich book. It just feels like a whole entire world in and of its own. And I think it's one of the coolest things that I've read. And in general, with Edenville and all that you created within Renville County, is just super cool. And I really hope that people pick this one up because I think that they're in for quite a wild ride. That's like very entertaining, but I dare you to not have a tear in your eye by the end of it. It is on shelves now from William Morrow. Thank you so much, Sam, for chatting with me about Galway's Gospel.
Thank you so much. I truly had a blast. Have faith in the fog.
A huge, huge thank you, as always, to Sam for not only coming on the show, but for the energy that he brings whenever he comes on to have a conversation about his work or about anything in general. Sam is one of my favorite people to talk to. He's super creative and insightful whenever it comes to any kind of art, and looking to points of reference for inspiration, especially how he talks about video games and decision making and how that affects his work and the characters that he writes. It's just always such a delight to get to talk to him about these things. And I could not be more thrilled that I've had him on twice in the same year. So huge thank you to Sam again. Looking forward to next week. I will be returning with another repeat author that was on the show earlier this year. Philip Fracassi back, and he's going to be talking about the Autumn Springs Retirement Home Massacre. Earlier this year, he was on to talk about his sci-fi novel, The Third Rule of Time Travel, but this will be a much more horrific conversation, I can assure you. So thank you all so much for staying tuned, listening in, liking, resharing, posting, all that good stuff. It's always so heartening to see the community show up for you week in and week out. So I just want to extend another thank you to you all. And yeah, I'll see you guys next week.